So let's take a look at the perineum. If you look at the structure right here, you can notice that this structure is roughly diamond shaped. So the perineum is roughly diamond shaped and it's located between the levator ani. So here's the levator ani or levator ani muscles, the right and the left levator ani, and then also in between the thighs, so in the inner thigh. So that was actually just a rough description of where it is actually situated. But it's important to know for any anatomist, or if you're learning anatomy, it's important to know where is the exact location of the perineum. So in order to know that, let's define the boundaries. There are no vertebrates here, so we're going to be making use of the bones that are present in vicinity of the perineum. So anteriorly, if you're looking at it, you can observe that there is the pubic symphysis. The pubic symphysis is just the meeting point of the two pubic bones. Then we can find the other ligament. There's a small little ligament right here, a small little ligament shaped like a small block that is known as the arcuate ligament of the pubic symphysis. Then let us look at the anterolateral relations here. Anterolateral means towards the side. So towards the side, what can we see? We can see these structures right here. And what are these structures called? These structures are the tuberosities of the ischium or the ischial tuberosity. Then we have the rami or the rami of the ischiopubic bone. So this bone right here is the pubic bone, and this one is the ischial bone. And the emergence give rise to a rami, and this one is the anterolateral relation. Then posteriorly, let us look at the posterior aspect. So how I can say this is the posterior aspect? The presence of the coccyx and the sacrum. That's the sacrum, and the coccyx determine the position of, like, give us an idea that we are looking at the posterior aspect. So of course the posterior limit is basically the coccyx and the sacrum. Then, so that's the coccyx and the sacrum. And there's also something known as the sacrotuberous ligaments. The sacrotuberous ligaments are the posterolateral limit of the perineum. So they extend, like they're ligaments that come off of the sacrum, the border of the sacrum, and attach themselves onto the tuberosity of the posterior aspect of the ischial bone. Now, moving forward, let us look at the entire structure inferiorly. Now, inferiorly, the entire structure, you can see that it is diamond shaped. But in order to simplify the entire structure more, it is important to draw a line between the two ischial tuberosities. And this line is known as the ischiotuberous line, which divides the entire structure into the upper urogenital tract and the lower urogenital triangle, and the lower anal triangle. And let's take a look at it laterally. Now, laterally, you can observe the two triangles right here. So the urogenital triangle is the one that projects downward and in a forward direction, and then the anal one projects downward in a backward direction. And both of them have a rough angle between them that's about 120 degrees. In males, there is an extension of this entire structure into the bulb, the penile attachments, and then for the females, there are attachments that are to the labia majora, the labia minora, the clitoris, the vagina, and the urethral orifices. Another thing that I would like to add is the fact that there are limits. There are borders or limits, deep limits and superficial limits. So the deep limit is basically the pubic diaphragm, and the superficial limit is the skin or the dermis of the abdomen and the inner thigh. So you can observe the perineum in the atlas here, and you can see that this is the anal triangle and the anterior borders of it. So we have the pubic symphysis and the arcuate ligament, which is not really here, but okay, so the arcuate ligament, that's here. So, okay. I'm just going to get the arcuate ligament. Okay, so that's right there. The one in the green is the arcuate ligament. And then let's see the anterolateral relations, which are the rami and the tuberosities. Then let us go on to the posterior aspect. So posteriorly, as we can see that Okay, that's a posterior aspect. And we have the sacrum, the coccyx, and then we have the sacrus tuberous ligaments right there. Um, that's the anal triangle. That's the anal triangle, and the urogenital triangle. And I don't know what's this. What is this? Okay, so this is the skin of the perineum, which is the most superficial border, and the inferior border is the pelvic diaphragm, which is about here. Yep, so that's about it. That's all that you have to know. Let us look at each of the structures individually, namely the urogenital triangle the and the posterior anal triangle. Let us take a look at the anal triangle. The anal triangle is a component of the perineum, and it's different in the case of males and females. In the case of males, it is much more smaller, but in the case of females, it's wider transversely in order to allow childbirth. So the components of the anal triangle include the anal canal, the anal sphincters, the ischioanal fossa, nerves, and vessels. So let us look at these components first. So if you roughly pictorially look at it, you can see that that right there is the superficial perineal fascia. Now the superficial perineal fascia is in continuous with the subcutaneous fascia. That means it's really close to the skin and is the outermost part of the anal triangle. Then, if we go deeper, we can find the muscles. We have the levator ani and the obturator muscles that are found laterally to the levator ani. But then there's something else. Under these two muscles, we can find the deep fascia. The deep fascia is one of the main components that lines both of the muscles on the inferior aspect. And then under the deep fascia, we can find the ischioanal fossa. Now, the ischioanal fossa is a horseshoe-shaped space, and it's not always empty. It consists of vessels and nerves and arteries and veins, etc., etc. So that was the first half of the components that we looked at. So we looked at the superficial fascia, the deep fascia, and the ischioanal fossa. But there are a lot more components inside the anal triangle, namely the external anal sphincter, the anococcygeal ligament, and the iliococcygeal raphe. Now let us take a look at them on the atlas. Okay, so that right there is the ischioanal fossa or the the fossa right there that we talked about earlier, namely the ischioanal fossa. But then we are more concerned about the other structures that I spoke about. So the first structure that I spoke about is the external anal sphincter. The external anal sphincter is this. So I'm just gonna go inferior here and you can observe the anal sphincter. So this here is the superficial anal sphincter. Behind that we have the external anal sphincter, and this is the deep anal sphincter. All of these are they are formed by bands of muscles that surround the lower part of the anal canal. The deepest fiber blends with the lower fiber. So this is the deepest. All of the fibers they blend with parts of the puborectalis. So which is the puborectalis muscle? So this band of muscle that you can see right here is known as the puborectalis muscle, and all of them blend together to form this the lowest structure or the external raphe. And they have an additional support. The additional support is given posteriorly. As you can see posteriorly, we can find the coccyx. Wait, okay, so basically, if I'm going to move this entire structure posteriorly, you can notice that the anal structure is supported by another part known as the coccyx. So this is the coccyx and this is the anus. So between this, we have the small structure that is a fibrous band of structure known as the anococcygeal ligament. So it's a fibromuscular ligament known as the anococcygeal ligament. And then there's a separation of the lowest anal epithelium with the help of submucosa. We also have the iliococcygeal raphe that is separated. So, of course, this is the coccyx and this is the ilium. So there is something between them that's not really visible here, but it is separated from each other with the help of perineal fascia. So yeah, those are all of the components that we spoke about earlier. So let us look at the urogenital tract. So that roughly is a rough diagram of the urogenital triangle, especially the muscles. So the first structure that it comes exterior to it is known as the perineal membrane. And the perineal membrane is divided into a dorsal and a ventral part. The dorsal part is in close contact with the ischiopubic ramus. Now we're going to see the ischiopubic ramus in the atlas in order to understand better, but there is an attachment to a ligament. There's a ligament right here, as it's not visible right here, but there's a small ligament right here that is known as the ischiopubic ligament, or it's also known as the ischiopubic um, attachment of the ischiopubic ligament with the help of a ligament, and that ligament is basically the support of the dorsal part of this ventral part, dorsal part of the urogenital triangle, of the membrane of the urogenital triangle. Then we have the ventral portion. The ventral portion is in contact with the arcuate ligament of the pubis. Now, the arcuate ligament of the pubis also attaches the entire urogenital tract ventrally to the pubic bone, because the arcuate ligament is formed where there is the meeting of the pubic symphysis. Posteriorly, we can see that it's continuous with the fascia of the perineal body. Okay, so as you can see here, this structure right here, this is known as the perineal membrane. Now, the important fact about the perineal membrane is the fact that it's in close continuity. As you can see here, it's in close continuity with posteriorly with the posterior perineal body. So this is a perineal body and it's in close contact with it. Now, anteriorly, as you can see, inside it, you can find that there is the intimate connection of the ventral part with the anterior ligament. So this ligament right here was the one that we were talking about, known as uh, known as the arcuate ligament. So that was the arcuate ligament of the pubis bone. Then we have the ramus. So the ramus is basically, so if I'm gonna look at the ramus, that's the ramus right here. So as you can see that there is also a connection with the ramus that with the help of the dorsal body. So this is a dorsal body which connects itself to the ramus. That being said, this is a female model. So you can see that the female model, the entire structure is in close contact with the clitoris. Then we have the vaginal opening, and then we also have the cervix and the vaginal wall. So it has to keep these structures in account. But in the case of males, it's also different, because in the case of males, we have the perineal membrane is basically it traverses 2.2 to 3 centimeter behind the inferior border of the pubic symphysis. So it goes beyond the inferior symphysis. It's much more longer, and it contains the vessels and the nerves of the bulbs of the penis, and then the bulbourethral tract. Then we have the urethral orifices, and then we have the deep dorsal vessels, dorsal nerve veins, and the pubic arch, and the scrotal vessels and the veins, and basically all of the veins and the vessels of the structures of the main genitalia. In females, it is divided into to form the triangle for vagina and the urethra. Then it is attached to the there's also the hymenal ring and the levator ani here too. There are also Bartholin glands and the clitoris. I think that this diagram is a way more convenient way in order to understand about the structures that we saw earlier. So that's the membrane of the perineum, or the perineal membrane is right there. And then let us study the other fascia that's known as the superficial perineal fascia. After the superficial perineal fascia, we have the deep perineal fascia. The deep perineal fascia, as you can see, lines the internal muscles of the perineum. Now let us know more about the deep perineal fascia. The deep perineal fascia covers most of the muscles of the urogenital triangle, including the bulbocavernous, the ischiocavernosus, the superficial transverse perineal muscle. We're going to look into more detail into these muscles later, but now let us first go with the flow and get to know more of these structures, and let's do the muscles in the end. So in accordance with this, there's also another ligaments that are attached to the penis and the clitoris from the perineal fascia, and then there are also and this fascia then is continuous with the obliques and the rectus sheath too, because of course the rectus abdominis muscle, it goes on inferiorly and covers most of the inferior abdominal region too. Now there are certain pouches inside this cavity, just as we have pouches in the peritoneum, and pouches are usually they're usually known to contain a lot of a lot of connective tissues and a lot of fluid accumulation. There can be a case of fluid accumulation, blood, urine, etc. And maybe they are made up of subcutaneous tissue, etc. And they are the reason why there is sometimes a discoloration of the genitalia. And let us look at the pouches. So the first pouch that we're going to be looking at is known as the subcutaneous pouch, that is located between the superficial perineal fascia and the deep perineal fascia. Then we have the superficial pouch that is located superior to the deep perineal fascia and the perineal membrane. Those were the pouches, and lastly, let us look at the muscles. Now, the muscles are different in the case of males and females. The diagram that we're looking here is a female perineum, so this is going to be different from the male. Let us look at the muscle. The names of the muscles are similar, but the structures of the muscle is different. So the first muscle that we're going to be looking at is known as the ischiocavernosus. The ischiocavernosus, the main function of the ischiocavernosus is related to the pressure and the erection. So it covers the crus of the penis and the clitoris. It is attached to the ischial tuberosity. As you can see, this tuberosity right here is known as the ischial tuberosity. And it helps in maintenance of the penile erection and the clitoral pressure. Next, we can see that there is the perineal body. That's the perineal body that is below right here, and then attached to the perineal body like a crown, we have the bulbous spongiosis. Now, remember the fact that bulbospongiosis is quite different in the case of males. Here we're seeing the female bulbospongiosis, which is directly attached to the perineal body. The perineal body is basically a mass of fibers of muscles that make an intimate connection between the urogenital tract and the urogenital perineum and the anal perineum. And they also help in connecting the bulbospongiosis. Bulbospongiosis help in the maintenance of the vestibular folds and also the clitoris. Now, the bulbospongiosis in the males. So look at the male structure right here. It is very different. So you can see the ischiocavernosus right here. It is quite narrow because, and remember the fact that I said earlier that the perineum of the female is much more transverse. As you can see, the perineum of the female right here, it's much more wider as compared to the perineum of the male right here. So you can see the ischiocavernosus right there, this one, and then we can see the bulbospongiosis. The bulbospongiosis here is paired and it's joined at a line here in between. And then another thing you can observe is the fact that there is the presence of something known as the perineal raphe, which is just like a stalk that attaches the bulbospongiosis below with the transverse superficial perineal muscles. And then we also have the external anal sphincter. There's not a great significant perineal body here as compared to the female structure. Now, the main job of the bulbospongiosis here is to maintain the flow of urine. So it has a contractile mechanism, and it helps to ejaculate semen and also contract the vestibular folds when inside the female vagina, when the penis is inside the vagina. So it helps to contract the vestibular folds so that there is a release of fluid, and also help in the release of semen by contracting several times, by contracting the penile structure several times. Of the perineum is mostly done by the branches of the pudendal artery. So the branches of the pudendal artery include the inferior rectal artery and the perineal artery. And the pudendal artery arises from the inferior division of the internal iliac, the anterior division of the internal iliac, which is from the common iliac, which eventually is from the abdominal aorta. So as you can see the progression from above to downwards, and how there is the major supply from from the aorta, and the ultimate branches are the inferior rectal and the perineal rectal. So as you can see here, that's the abdominal aorta, and that's the common iliac artery. And then coming off of the common iliac artery, we have the internal iliac artery, and then ultimately we have the perineal artery right there. And that is the perineal artery right there. Pudendal artery, sorry, not the perineal, the pudendal artery. The pudendal artery gives off the rectal branch, the inferior rectal branch, which is this one, and then we have the perineal branch. So this one right here is the perineal artery that comes off. It also has different arteries coming off from here, supplying the penis or the clitoris in the case of women, but we're not going to be looking at that now. So just remember that's a pudendal. Coming off of it, we have the inferior rectal, and then we have the perineal artery. The venous supply ain't that different too, because here too we have the pudendal vein that drains into the internal iliac vein, which might go to the common iliac vein and which will drain into, of course, the inferior vena cava.